3 apartment employees? Check. 1 apartment maid? Check. 1 apartment doorman? Check. 1 major apartment household leader? Check. 1 FBI agent? Check. Thanksgiving? Check. Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade 2010? Double check. That's what it all gets together with the 2011 movie Tower Heist. The movie was directed by a man that is no longer in the entertainment industry after getting into the Harvey Weinstein effect, aka the hashtag #MeToo movement, Brett Ratner, who directed the Rush Hour trilogy, The Family Man, and X-Men The Last Stand. The film was produced by Brian Grazer, along with one of the stars of the film, Eddie Murphy, but it also stars in a big massive cast here. We'll get to that as well. The movie made its first premiere at the Zigvat Theater on October 24th, 2011, then officially released on November 4th. It was unfortunately a box office bomb, gaining only $152.9 million on a between a $75 to $85 million budget. And it was released around the same time as Clint Eastwood's J. Edgar, and what many people could say is the worst film of 2011, Jack and Jill. But I can guarantee this movie would probably be a better experience than Jack and Jill. Set in one of the biggest apartment complex buildings in around the Columbus Circle area, the big billionaire that is almost the head of the entire building, Arthur Shaw, has been arrested on many fraudulent cases. This means a big problem for all the employees, including the building manager, Josh Kovacs, as Arthur Shaw had basically took a lot of the employees' monies for a lot of their savings, but didn't specifically told them where he was hiding it. So after when Josh decided to confront him about it, the general manager of the tower fired him along with 2 other employees, the main bellhop and one of the new employees as well. After investigating his own idea where Arthur might be hiding all their money and kind of trying to figure out from the FBI director who's in charge of this entire investigation, he decided to ask his fellow childhood friend under the name Slide, who is mainly a big crook and one of Josh's neighbors, to help him to make a big, massive deal. A massive heist to get all the money out of Arthur's apartment. And the best way to do it was on Thanksgiving Day, around the time when the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was going, so that Arthur would show up into court. So Ben and his fellow, now former employees, his best friend, and a couple of others to try to get the money out of that apartment so they can get back at their former leader. This movie is pretty bland, and I might say maybe be the worst out of all of these that I have seen, because there is just not a very memorable scene in this movie. It's just a typical movie that is kind of like, it's like it is also supposed to be a comedy action thing. It just doesn't work well because you know what's gonna happen. It's just like you've got the one massive rich man that gets arrested, you have the one that kind of tries to turn back on the manager, especially the one that falls in love with the official head of, like, police officer or agent of the entire investigation, and then just, they do this massive heist, and then things just go where they go. Now, I don't know if there's, like, supposed to be a message here that is telling us that even billionaires hide stuff or something like that, that wherever they hide it, they get what they deserve for how many fraudulent cases or bribery they have done to their fellow employees. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know what the message is really about here, because it's just like, it's kind of the typical evilness that Arthur Shaw has, that you can, it's like, not a very great villain, but it's just like a real, like, idiot, to be precise. Kind of going G-rated here as possible, even though the movie is rated PG-13. Now, I will mention that it is a bit of a weird scenario here, because you have to do the typical things you have to do to get into a heist. You have to set up everything and just to make sure, try to almost have a chance with the FBI agent or stuff like that, and then just things go around the other way. It just doesn't work that well. All the characters are just not really that memorable here. Josh is kind of the typical, like lead that you would see in many movies. Slide is just the typical out of one that is kind of out of the realms. And then you have like Charlie Gibbs, who is Josh's brother-in-law, the worrisome one. You got Mr. Fitzhawd, the kind of like the old one or something like that. You have Judd Hirsch, the very strict boss. You got Claire Demma, the FBI agent, of course, just the typical female one that always has to be the love interest. And then you got the Hispanic one specifically, that's the new employee. And you just get the maid specifically, and you got the doorman, and then you have the typical stereo personalities that you would see throughout the movie. And this cast list is just insane. As I just mentioned, of course, Eddie Murphy is one of the stars and he's the producer, but Ben Stiller is the main star of the film. You also have Casey Affleck, another man that ended up kind of getting somewhat of disgrace in the industry, although he's still working in the acting industry. Matthew Broderick, Judd Hirsch, Michael Pena, Gabourey Sidibe, Stephen McKinley Henderson, Nina Ardiana, and Alan Alda as Arthur Shaw, our supposed villain of the entire film. Now, with that ensemble cast, it feels like it would be great. It's just the characters are just like you don't remember any of them. It's just like you don't get much development with a lot of the peoples throughout the entire movie, other than like they don't have personalities. It's just like they're just going to do what they do, and just like yeah, it almost feels like normal human life, but it just like there's not really a character amongst any of them. Maybe Alan, but I just wish there was a lot more menacing scenes he has with either Josh or even the main FBI agent, specifically for his villain side approach. And as for the whole build up the heist thing, I will give it credit for having something of a unique twist when it comes to the heist of where the money is located at. I won't give it away where it is, but I would say that is kind of a unique way instead of the typical, oh, it's hiding in a secret safe or something like that, because that's where the movie thinks you're going, but it's not that direction. It is somewhere that is very special, but it is kind of a little bit of a setting that was not really mentioned, but where it's going to be located at was something related earlier in the film, in one specific scene, if you have seen the film. As for the Macy's Parade's involvement, it is interesting to see an aerial view skyline of all of the actual parade going on, but there were actually some additional filming for the film, like a week after the 2010 Thanksgiving Day Parade. They did some reshoots, like they brought like a couple of the floats and obviously the Snoopy balloon and even Tom Turkey and Macy's Great American Marching Band, to kind of recreate their scenes in the parades when moments when either any of the hotel employees see Snoopy go through, and I think Ben Stiller said, like as his Josh character, I think Josh had planned Snoopy, I believe. And then you also have, of course, the main Havoc, where a truck goes through the main parade route for a big, massive chase. But then you have, like, one thing I don't really like. It's the loud, echoing music that is on, like, is supposedly on the streets. Like, you hear a Kermit the Frog song, and you even hear the SpongeBob theme when the SpongeBob balloons goes by. Because you know for a fact, on that route, you don't hear, obviously, any music throughout the entirety parade route. It's just probably something the filmmakers did to think it is almost like a product placement, even though obviously the Macy's Parade is a real deal, and you see like a lot of character balloons all from that year's parade. It's basically the entire 2010 parade. You see many of the celebrities that participated in that year's parade. It's just like they filmed a lot out of the actual parade going through on Thanksgiving, and then they did a lot of reshoots with some additional ones, as I just mentioned earlier. They did a little behind-the-scenes explanation on that. Now, the movie is only like an hour and 44 minutes. It almost feels like, with a lot of things missing, it definitely makes sense it would have been more like close to over 2 hours. Even though I'm kind of glad it's not that long of a movie, but it still kind of felt long in general because there were just like not very memorable scenes that were going on. It's just the pacing was just not that great, and the direction was just not a standout, not even the editing. It's just like the main focus were just mainly all the actors is doing all their performances, and it's just not really something that wasn't really worth it, honestly. Heck, I even think Matthew Broderick as Mr. Fitzhawd is definitely not a great casting choice. I just don't think that character doesn't fit with that actor specifically. I mean, yeah, I know Matthew Broderick has been trying to not. He's not really as big as he was like in the 80s or the 90s, specifically when you look at his filmography. I know he just had one film, I think it was somewhere last year, I believe. I forgot what it was. It was No Hard Feelings. Yes, that's what it was. It's kind of sad he's not been able to get casted in big major movie roles as he used to be when he was a youngster, even though he is a bit older. It's just like, I feel like this movie kind of miscasted him, I would say. If he was a different character, maybe, but it just like, his character's just so weird. I know it's almost like, is he trying to be like his Max Bloom version of his character in The Producers, both on Broadway and the film adaptation, specifically of the musical? It's just I just don't think he's not a great person. Casey Affleck's just always like the worrisome one. Like, it makes sense like in Manchester by the Sea, which that was a phenomenal performance, but this performance is just not that right. It's just like, I'm worried. I'm worried. That's what it feels like about that character. And then you just have the stereotypical characters as I kind of mentioned. Like, even some of the accents and some of the characters are just off. As I stated, the movie is rated PG-13, so it's not a G-rated movie. I don't think there's any swear words I heard in the film, unless if I'm mistaken, but it's just maybe some of the action or some of the violence. It's not a really heavy violent movie. It's just like, I think the plot is just kind of maybe the reason why it's rated PG-13. I say this is not worth a watch. I don't think I recommend you watch this movie. It's not a bad film, it's just not good. I think this is probably the worst one out of all the realms of the pop culture aspects of the Macy's Parade that I have talked about in this series. Now we have gotten what I think is the worst one done. There's only one more movie left. And we're going all the way back in time again. And I think, to wrap it up, we go with the one that I think was the one that started the whole aspect of the Macy's Parade in the realms of pop culture. After when the parade came back to World War II, is there or is there not a Santa Claus?